but I'm watching you. Watching the things you do. I'm watching the way you treat people. The way you treat me and my mom and my sister. The way you live your life is having a big impact on me. When it's time for me to choose a career and provide for my family, your work ethic will be on my mind. The time you spend with me, even doing simple things, will give me a sense of security. There will be times in my life where I struggle with integrity, and I may be not sure what to do. But I will recall how you stood up for what was right, even if you could have looked the other way. Many of the choices you are making, I will also make. Please don't be afraid to show me your failures, to show me your mistakes. I will learn from them. Dad, are you listening? I'm watching. Watching to see if you really believe what you say about God. I need you to help show me the way. Show me how to live life that isn't safe, but is good. So I'm watching you, Dad, every day. You're teaching me how to live, whether you know it or not.
Well, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all you have done, all that you will do, and mainly thank you for who you are, because the difference that you make in your family, difference that you make in your church, now it's like getting to me. I'm watching so many teary eyes out in the audience. I'm like, nope. The difference that you make in the world has a profound impact. You don't always know that. You don't always feel that day to day, so it's days like these where we have to say, Happy Father's Day. It's making a difference. So thank you, dads. Just our approach on Father's Day and Mother's Day and Veterans, all the days, right, that we have is that we want to give honor to the people that we should honor in our lives. But we never want to let the honor that we show to people eclipse the honor that we give to God. And so that's always our approach. And so today we want to give honor to dads while we give honor to God. And so let's do that today. One of the things I just think about fathers in general is sometimes they're unappreciated or underappreciated. And I think there might be many reasons for that within today's world and just the culture that we live in. But I think one of the reasons is because in the ways that are very measurable, we just don't stack up to moms. Like if we had a competition, it was like between a dad and a mom and said, I want you to write down all of the places your kids have to be and what times they are at. Who could get more accurate, a mom or a dad? And like moms 9 times out of 10. And I use 9 times out of 10 because it's Father's Day. So like we got to give dad a point here, right? Or if it's like, okay, we're going on a family vacation, and what I want you to do is to pack for your family and the entire family, including your spouse. Who do you think could do a better job? Well, 9 times out of 10, I think mom's probably got that one too. But just because mom's good at some things, it doesn't mean that dad isn't wired for some things. And one of the things that I think dad is wired for that often just goes unnoticed, and I feel this like deep within when I'm doing this with my kids, is that dads are wired for this to help their families live in joy, and overcome fear. I think this is one of the things that dads are uniquely wired for. And dads, think about this, if you would, is like when you're helping your family live in joy, isn't it one of those things that you're just like, yes, this is what I was made for? Or when you're helping your family overcome fear, it's just one of these things just inside for me as a dad. I'm like, this is what I was made for. And I think it's one of these aspects of dads that just, again, it just goes unappreciated within our world and culture. And so, if we threw up an image like this, I think I've shown something like this before, but what is in this image? Well, it depends on who you are. So dads will say, it's joy. It's filled with joy. And what would moms say? It's filled with fear, right? And so this is what dads do to cause joy and to help kids overcome fear. And just, it's this delicate line. This is what Child Protective Services sees right in the middle. And this is what moms see on the right. But dads have this ability. So let me give you a story from this week. Last Saturday, I should say, my family and I wanted to go to the beach. And so I said, all right, let's get ready. Let's go to the beach. And my daughter is like, I don't want to go to the beach. And I'm like, why? And she goes, well, I don't want to get in the water, and because it's hot outside, I don't want to just be on the sand. I was like, well, that sounds reasonable, but get your clothes on. We're going to the beach. Dads are also sometimes good at that. So we go to the beach, and on the way, I'm thinking there's some fear that's inside of her. And so I'm like, okay, Quinn, why don't you want to go in the water? And she just was like, I don't want to get stung by a jellyfish. All right, let's work on that. And so I start thinking, how can I help her overcome her fear? And so the first tactic I had was the information tactic. Quinn, I don't even know if it's the season for jellyfish, right? I don't know anything about jellyfish or if there's a season or not, but if it's not the season for jellyfish, would you get in the water? And she's like, no, not getting in the water. Okay, what else we got? So I think a little bit, that maybe like a slow exposure approach might work. And I was like, what if we just put our feet in the water and then hoping we can get her deeper? And she goes, nope, not putting my feet in the water. And so I started thinking about this, and I realized that joy is one of the most powerful emotions that we have. And joy is often really great at overcoming fear. So I say, Quinn, the last time we went to the beach, do you remember that you held my hands? And do you remember when the waves came in, I pulled you up, and then once the wave was past, I put you back down in the water, and we laughed, and we played, and we had just the best time? Do you think we can do that again? And she goes, yeah, fully realizing that she has to put her feet in the water in order to do this thing that we did the last time. And so we go to the beach, and we do this for, an hour. My arms are tired. I'm like, Quinn, do you think I can hold you real tight and we can go deeper into the water and we can jump over the waves together? Yeah, Dad, let's do it. Right? What happened to the fear? I don't know. I'm just going with it. I'm like, all right. And so we go and we jump over the waves. We probably do that for another 30 minutes. Then I convince her, hey, just lay on this boogie board. And we'll just float over the waves out there, and we have a grand old time, and I have no idea what happened inside of her, but something clicked. 2 days later, it's 6 a.m., she has a field trip with her summer camp, so I'm waking her up, and it's still dark. And so when I wake her up, she's like, Dad, it's so dark outside. And then she said, but I don't have to fear because my big daddy man is with me. I think that's a title from Bluey, but I don't have to fear because my daddy man is with me. And I know what she's thinking. Dad versus jellyfish. Dad wins. Dad versus a shark. I mean, we could have seen a shark deeper in the water. Dad wins, of course. Dad versus the dark. Dad wins. Dad versus bad guys. Dad wins. And so, in her mind, wherever Dad is, when Dad is with me, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to live in fear. And I can live joyfully in the moment. And it is so cool to do that for your kids. I know there's a day when she's going to look back at that list and be like, Dad and Shark? Shark's going to eat Dad alive. I know there's a day where, she might say, well, some bad guys are bigger than Dad, so, and what will I do in that day? I will tell her how I live without fear. Because although I am not stronger than everything, I believe in a God who is. I believe in a God who goes with me. I believe in a God who is all-powerful. I believe in a God that loves us, that fights our battles for us. And so if you no longer think Dad is the biggest thing ever, which I'm not, then there's good news, because God goes with you and does the same thing for you, because he does the same thing for me. You see, trusting in our own strength breeds fear. Trusting in our own strength breeds fear. It's because we know our limits. You guys know your limits, right? How far can you swim? How far can you run? How long can you stay awake? How long can you work? How much can you eat? It's these limits that we have. And when we begin to get to the end of our limits, we start to feel this fear because we don't know how much we have left. And so this anxiety and this fear comes in, and we begin to see life through the lens of, I don't know what I have left. And suddenly everything can be a fear-producing moment. But embracing God in joyful relationship fills us with his unshakable faith. Trusting in our own strength breeds fear, but embracing God in joyful relationship fills us with his unshakable strength. Do you see that? Do you feel that? It's in Scripture lots of different ways, but maybe the most direct way we see this in Scripture is in Nehemiah 8, verse 10. And in this passage, Israel's been through a lot, and they are beginning to become Israel again, to take their land back, to build walls, to inhabit the temple, and all of those sort of things. And then there is just this grief that washes over them. That as a people, they have not had a relationship with God for a long time, and they've really messed up as a people. But God turns to them and he says, do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. And, what does this mean is we should not wallow in our fear. We should not wallow in our shame. We should not wallow in our doubt, because the joy of being with God, the joy of being with our Father, is our strength. And it changes the way we approach everything. And so the question that I would just want you to chew on this morning as we look at a few things is are you trusting in your own strength? Or are you choosing to leave fear and doubt behind by embracing a joyful relationship with God? Let me ask that one more time. It's a little bit of a wordy question, but I couldn't do any better than that. Are you trusting in your own strength? Or are you choosing to leave fear and doubt behind by embracing a joyful relationship with God? Let me show you what this looks like in Scripture and really kind of unpack this in a way that we can take this with us. Mark chapter 9, verse 2, and we're going to, chapter 9, verse 2, is a story of the Transfiguration, which is one of those stories that you're like, what is going on here? And hopefully we'll explain it a little bit more, but it says, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up to a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud. This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant. And so what is this story about? This is a strange story. It's Peter, James, and John. They go up to the top of the mountain, and all of a sudden Jesus is transfigured, which just means he starts looking like God. He starts glowing. And he starts glowing in a way, and it's overwhelming to those that are around. And I can't quite imagine what this would be like, but Moses and Elijah appear, and you're like, what are these guys doing here? This is strange. And Peter is just overwhelmed, and he starts saying things that don't make sense, right? Peter's pretty good at that. And so he says, hey, should we build some shelters? Which the word in Greek for shelter is the same word for tabernacle. And so the idea behind this is, should we build 3 tabernacles? One for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elijah, in order to worship you guys. Which, that's why Peter, through Mark, put in parentheses, Peter did not know what he was talking about. Because he wouldn't worship Moses or Elijah. He's just sort of confused and awestruck at what he's seeing. And so then this cloud comes down. And it says, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. And then Moses and Elijah are gone. What's the point of this story? What a strange happening this is. And the idea behind this is pretty simple. Jesus is greater than the greatest prophets. He is the God of the mountain. And so Moses is a prophet. He's a mountain prophet. And he goes up to Mount Sinai, right, to meet God, to spend time with God. And when Moses would spend time with God and he would come down, his face would shine. It would fade, but his face would shine. And instead, we have Jesus who is emanating light from him because he is God. In other words, he is the God on the mountain. The same thing with Elijah. Elijah, had this interaction with God where God appeared to him in a whisper. And the idea behind this is Jesus is the God who was the whisper. He is more than just a prophet. He's the God of the mountain. And so I can imagine if you're Peter, James, and John, and you're coming down off the mountain, what are you thinking? I got God on my side. Who can be against me? Jesus versus jellyfish? He's got it. Jesus versus sharks? He's got it. And really this time, right? Jesus versus the dark or bad guys or anything that I can stack up against Jesus. Jesus is God. He can handle anything that we're going to encounter. And can you imagine what it's like to come off of this mountaintop experience where you encounter God in the being of Jesus, very real and tangible, and just to experience all of that in joy and in fear, coming down off the mountain and thinking, God's got all of this. How cool is that? Have you had moments like that? I think we can probably relate to that. We've had moments, if you ask people, what is a moment where you felt the closest to God? A lot of people will say, camp, right? And you have this amazing worship at camp and these experiences at camp, and you say, why couldn't everything be like this? Why can't, I feel like Jesus is with me and I can leave behind this fear and embrace each moment with joy like I do at camp or like I do, on youth group events or like I do when I am in this place. So sometimes we wonder, why can't I have that? And I think we're about to find out. And if we look at Mark 9:14 through 24, we get the rest of the story. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, and the teachers of law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. "What are you arguing with them about?" he asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus. "Everything is possible for the one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." Love this story. But for them experiencing this after coming down the mountain, can you imagine what this is like? They've just encountered God. As they come down off the mountain, they encounter arguments between the disciples and the teachers of the law. They encounter division. They encounter the pride of these teachers of the law. They encounter demons and a child or young person who is controlled by a demon. They see failure in their counterparts, the other disciples and apostles. They see doubt and they see fear all around the situation. And so, like, if it was me, what would you be thinking? Can I go back up? Can I go back up the mountain? I don't want to deal with all this stuff down here. I want to live. Let me hop from mountain to mountain, right? This is what we want to do in life. Only be filled with good experiences, experiencing this always good things. And that's not the way God designed his kingdom. The kingdom of God on earth is not a series of uninterrupted mountaintop experiences. That is not the way that God made his kingdom here on earth. God instead wants his people to confront darkness and expand his kingdom with unwavering faith in him. You see that? When you're at camp, what do you say? I wish this could go on forever. But is that what God asks us to do? To collect together, to live in joy, and just keep our little light to ourselves? No. We're all supposed to have these mountaintop moments, this prayer time with God, these study time with God, this intimacy with God, this connection with him, so that his Spirit can fill us, so that we can come down off the mountain and bring our light to the rest of the world and bring the gospel to the rest of the world, so that God's power through us can push back the kingdom of darkness, and that his kingdom can rule and expand and grow and change everything it touches. That's what he wants us to do. So Jesus looks at this boy and at his father, and he says, "How long has the boy been like this?" "Since childhood." We've got lots of questions about that. I'm not going to tackle those today. And then what does the father say? "If you can." And Jesus picks up on this. It's a little snarky from Jesus, isn't it? If you can? Like he's bringing that to light. He doesn't give the dad the benefit of the doubt. Like we just ignore that and move on, right? Assume the best. Jesus says, if you can. He wants him to express his faith. And so immediately, I like this, immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief." I love this phrase. I love this phrase because there are moments when all of us want to believe, but we need help in overcoming our unbelief. There's moments when all of us have enough belief where it feels like we should be able to overcome the fear and the doubt and everything that is coming against us, but we find ourselves not having enough faith, and so what do we say? Or what should we say? God, help me overcome my unbelief. In other words, close the gap between the faith that I have and the faith that I want to have. You see that? You love that prayer? Because we want to have the faith, but sometimes we don't always have it. And so what do? Just like every other prayer, we lift it up to God and we say, I don't have it. Come back later. Now we say, I don't have it, God. make up the difference. That's part of his grace, is the ability to make up the difference in the faith that we don't have in the moment that we need it. Have you felt that before? It's amazing. And so a lot of us, when we are struggling in our faith, it's because of usually three things. Doubt. And the questions sound like this: are you real, God? Are you really with me? And so we doubt that he's real, that he exists. We might doubt that he's really with me or for me or fighting for me. And so these are the doubts that begin to come in if doubt is the thing that is stripping away our faith. For some of us, doubt's not as much of the thing, but fear is. Are you really powerful enough to overcome whatever it is? Or will you overcome whatever it is? And the other one is pride. And the questions are, am I really not smart enough? Some of us have this idea that we're going to figure out everything about God and explain it to everyone else because we're smart enough. What is that? Pride. Some of us have this idea that we have to know all the answers of why things happen and when things happen and how they unfolded and to make sense of everything that happens in our world. Let me tell you, you're never going to do that. I can't figure it out. You can't figure it out. But what I do know is that God is always present and at work. And what Satan meant for evil, God will use for his good. I can't explain all of that either. But we are not going to have the smarts to figure that out. We're not going to have the strength to overcome everything in our life. And so pride says, I trust myself more than I trust in you, God. And then what does that leave us with? Leaves us with fear. Because if we're trusting in our own strength, it breeds fear. So what do? We do what the Father does. We say, help me overcome my unbelief. In other words, we have to choose belief when we don't have the feeling of belief all the time. And so we say, God, I choose not to trust my doubt. I choose to trust you instead. I choose not to trust my fears. I choose you instead. These are two big topics, but doubt is one of those things. Questions are great, doubt is not. Because a doubt is a choice to remain in disbelief. I think I said this last week. We make a choice to doubt. We choose not to want to believe. We come to God and we say, hey, don't help me overcome my unbelief. Don't help me. I want to keep my doubt. Why? Because I think that I'm smart enough to figure it out on my own without you, and when I get everything figured out, then I'll have faith. That's not faith. You're not going to be that smart. Sorry. I wish we all were. But then would we really have this kind of faith? I choose not to trust my fears. We all are going to have moments of fear. We're going to have things that we have to face, and guess what? We won't have the faith that we need to face our fears until the moment that we need to have it. Why not? Because we haven't asked God in desperation. We haven't said, God, I have no idea how to handle this, what to do. God, make up the difference. Close the gap between the faith I have and the faith that I need to have in this moment. We say, I choose to trust in you more than I trust in myself. This is hard for a lot of people. It gets easier the less of you there is to trust in, right? The more your mind slips, the more your body slips, the more you feel weakness come in, it's easier to trust in God because you don't feel that strength. And so we choose to trust in God more than ourselves. And then we choose a joyful relationship with you, God, that awakens our unshakable faith. That's what we want. We want God to awaken this unshakable faith in us. But a lot of times he has to make up the difference. We have to have some. But he often makes up the difference. And so what do we do? Well, it's like we talked about with my daughter. Trusting in our own strength breeds fear. But embracing God in joyful relationship fills us with his unshakable faith. I think for a lot of us, somehow we don't think it's real. Sometimes we don't think that God is near to us, or that we can reach out and he'll answer us, or that maybe we can feel his spirit moving inside of us, or we can ask him questions and wait and actually listen for the way he's going to guide us. I think there's this idea that, okay, God's real, but he's not near. And what I want you to know is that God is near. These are my two kids, Truett and Quinn, and they look perfect, right? Even when they're at church, they make me look like a really good father. There's moments in between the things where it's like, okay, stop bickering and arguing and all this stuff, but they're really good kids. And this past week, actually yesterday, we're playing together and they're like wrestling and tickling one another, right? Like they do. And it's fun, and it's still fun at this moment, but Truett is winning. He's older. And so I see Quinn start to get a little bit frustrated that Truett is winning in this tickle, wrestle, whatever you call it, fight. And I'm in the same room, and Quinn literally, when she feels that, I don't want to lose this fight, she comes over to me, she wraps her arms around my arm, and she says, "Dad, get him." And so what do? I get him. Why? Well, one, because it's fun, right? And two, because I'm teaching her to trust in God by first allowing her to trust in me. God is as near to all of us in this room as I was to Quinn in that moment. But through fear or doubt or pride, God's there, his hand is out, and he's like, just take it. Take my hand and point. But are you going to take it? Are you going to let God go before you? Are you going to let God fight? Are you going to let God be your rock and your fortress and your salvation and the stronghold in which he keeps you safe from all fear and keeps you rooted and established in his love that causes joy to overflow? That is the kind of God that we serve. So if this morning you're thinking, I want that, it's time to take his hand. Whether that's in the pew that you're in, if you just pray, close your eyes when we sing the next song and just pray, God, I'm taking your hand right now. If that's up here because you want the whole church to pray for you, then come forward. If you want to pray with one of our elders, you can go to the prayer room. Or if you're like, I've never given my life to God, well, do it today. There's no reason to wait. Take his hand and point and let God strip away every ounce of fear that you have in your life while we celebrate, enjoy the relationship that we have with him. Come while we stand and sing.
The joy of the Lord will be my strength. I will not falter, I will not faint. He is my shepherd, I am not afraid. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord will be my strength. He will uphold me all of my days. I am surrounded by mercy and grace. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord. joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord will be my strength. I will not waver, walking by faith. He will be strong to deliver me safe. The joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord, the joy of the Lord is my strength. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. And it's higher than the mountains that I face, and it's stronger than the power of the grave, and it's constant in the trial and the change. This one thing remains, this one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, and on and on and on and on it goes. Yes, it overwhelms and satisfies my soul, and I never ever have to be afraid. This one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, in death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid, there's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. In death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid, there's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. This one thing remains, this one thing remains. Father, we are so grateful for your love and the way that it never gives up on us and the way that you invite us to call you Father. Thank you so much for your love that we see in Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. Happy Father's Day, everybody. We'll see you next week.